Let's just get started then. So, the meeting is just being recorded, so just if anybody's got any issues with that, it's just so other people can view it as well. On to the first slide then. If you could move that along, Lavanya, that'd be great. Thanks. Perfect. So just, I guess, a little bit more about myself. I am a dual qualified Scots and English Law LLB graduate from the University of Dundee. So I graduated in the summer just past, in the midst of COVID, so that was super fun, and graduation got cancelled. But anyway, I am currently a diploma in professional legal practice student, so that is the Scots version of the LPC, and I will actually be finishing that tomorrow. So yes, so almost have done 2 law degrees. And in the summer of 2019, I was a participant on the CMS Academy, which is CMS's vacation scheme. So I did this in 2019, which was before COVID was a thing. So this was a mix between being in the London office and in my home office in the Edinburgh office. I do know that last year it was held completely online and it was for 2 weeks instead. I haven't heard exactly how it's happening this year yet. So hopefully some of you will manage to get down to the offices that, of all the different firms that you're in, or if it's still online, hopefully you're more used to it if you're having, virtual webinars and seminars and tutorial groups and things at university. So hopefully you've quite well adapted to that. So on the back of doing the academy in 2019, I was then offered a position as a trainee solicitor, starting later this year in August. So the basis of this webinar is just how I did that, how I turned the vacation scheme that I did have into a training contract. In between all that, I did found See Through Law, so you can see the website link there, and it's just where I share all my top tips for getting into VAT schemes and things. So not super applicable for you guys if you're already on your VAT schemes and things, but feel free to share it around for your friends for next cycles and so on. So perfect. Moving on. Okay, so here are the 4 main topics I'm going to discuss today. Number 1, networking. 2, attitude. 3, etiquette. And 4, the need for continuous learning. So those are the 4 broad topics I'm going to discuss. And I will say though, I have been sent a list of questions that a lot of you sent in when you signed up. But if you do have any questions, just as the slides are going through, feel free to pop them in the chat and I can either answer them as we're going through or at the end. Okay, so moving on then to the very first one. Why do we have to network? What is the purpose of networking? Well, in the very, very basic sense then, networking is to grow your connections. And so you're getting to know other people, but also other people are getting to know you. And you're able to make better conversations with people by knowing more people. It just comes with practice. The more you speak to people and the more you go out and network, the better you become. And then you become more memorable because you're a person that can carry a good conversation with the person that you're talking to. So it all kind of links up. And you might hear, it's not always what you know, it's who you know. Not in the sense that there's lots of bribery and whatever, but it is always very, very useful to know people in the legal sector or otherwise. And you never really know who you're going to come across again in the future. So if you're attending, for example, these open days, or you're going to your VAT scheme, you don't know which one of these will be your supervising partner who you might end up working with in the future. So you want to build good relations as soon as possible. In terms of who benefits from networking, well, actually it's everyone. So you benefit because you're making connections, you're growing your network, and you're meeting more people. So this can help you find opportunities. But for example, if you've met somebody and then they remember, oh, you're looking for a position in, let's say, criminal law, for example, they will say, oh, I remember meeting someone who was interested in criminal law, and you can kind of make connections that way. So it's really important. It's also important for the other person, like I said, for them to remember you. And also important for the firm because they want to know whether you're a good person to go and talk out to clients. Like, can you network and, represent yourself in a manner applicable for the firm? And that's appropriate for the firm. So how can you network and how can you prepare before a networking event? So let's say you have an event coming up, so your VAC scheme, okay? So, and you need to learn how to network within your VAC scheme, but what should you do before that? So you have to carry out some research. Now, carry research out on the obviously you will have carried out research on the firm that you're applying to, but on the sector, on who your supervisor is, who your trainee buddy is, who the partner in that office is, who are the partners in that sector of the office, who's the head of that office branch. And that sort of things that you can bring up. So, if you find out that someone went to the same university as you, or someone that has a similar path into law as you, then that's something you can use in a conversation, and it makes making conversation much easier. So yeah, do make sure you prepare and think about what questions, prepare what questions are you going to ask, the people that you're meeting. Don't ask them questions that they can't answer. So don't ask a graduate, don't ask, for example, a partner in, mergers and acquisitions, what the eligibility for visas is for coming into the firm. That's just not appropriate. So you want to ask questions that the person can answer, but something that you can't just easily find out online. For example, how many seats are there in a traineeship? Well, the answer is 4. You can find that online, but also other people can tell you that. You don't have to waste the time of the person that you're networking with. So make sure you prepare some questions that are relevant and appropriate. So in terms of pre-meeting network as the last bubble there, so I will actually be pleased to say that before this event, I did have a few people message me on LinkedIn and just say, hi, my name's such and such. I'm really looking forward to the event. I blah, 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 I'm at university, I'm studying this. And kudos to all you guys who did that, because that's something that I would have done as well. I would have researched who the speaker at the event is, or who your your trainee partner is going to be, and you could even fire them an email or a message before saying, look, I'm really looking forward to joining the firm. I'm looking forward to learning, and I hope to meet you soon. So just something like that makes you much more memorable. And then when you eventually meet the person, either in person or like on camera, I recognize names that I'm seeing, whoever's name's popped up on Zoom, or you recognize somebody's name when they say, hi, my name's Amelia, nice to meet you. So it's a really good way to network and to do pre-meeting networking. So either messaging or emails or something like that. Perfect. Moving on. So how do you network? Because I do understand that some people are a little bit more anxious about, going out to speak to somebody that they've never met. They don't know what to say. They might stutter. They might sort of waffle. So here's how I would network in almost any given situation, unless I knew the person really, really well. Okay. So when you're in your VAC scheme, you want to start within your circle and work your way out. And by circle, I mean whatever sector or department or trainee group that you've been placed in. So, let's say, for example, I'll give you my personal example. When I was at CMS, I was in commercial litigation. So I got to really know everybody within commercial litigation. So those are the people within my circle. You want to do that before you start moving out, because then you forget people that are in your own sector and they'll say, oh, but have you met such and such? But if you've not sort of met everyone within your own sector, you're going to be like, no, I don't know who that person is. So hopefully that makes sense. You want to start in and then you want to move out. Okay. In terms of conversation starters, some of them are a bit cheesy, but actually they're just good to get the ball rolling. And what you want to do is you want to get the other person talking as much as they can, because it is a proven fact that people love to talk about themselves. So if you can get a partner talking about, what they did that day and what, interesting deal they're doing at the moment, or how they got into law, or why they picked that particular sector. These are all really good starters that lead into a much meatier conversation, and puts less, reliance on you to constantly think of new questions, because it can flow more naturally. Always try and find some common ground. So let's say, you've worked your way into your circle and now you're meeting somebody else from a different partner. You're working your way up. So you're now speaking to a partner in a different sector. And you can find if there's any common ground between you two. So you can start, where did you study? Blah, blah, blah. Did you train here? Did you train elsewhere? So on. But then you can say, oh, in your sector in energy, is there any crossover with my sector? I don't know, litigation. The answer is yes. But some sort of question about, whether there's any crossover and whether there's any common ground between you and the person you're speaking to. And that's a really good way to build a really strong network as well, because then you're having this common ground that you can then spread off and split into different things, talk about different people. Oh, I know such and such who was in such and such as well. So you want to try and find that common ground. Now, the whole point of network is that it's a benefit to you and it's a benefit to everybody around you. So how do you use an opportunity to network within your VAC scheme? So when you're speaking to someone and you're talking about all these different things, ask them, oh, that sounds like a really interesting deal that you're working on at the moment. Is there anything that you would like a hand on? Or is there anything that I can chip in with? Or, would you like me to proof anything? Or you can say, oh, they're saying, I'm working on some really big deal at the moment. Ask them, oh, and if they say they've got a call coming up, would it be okay if I sat in on the call with you, or visit the client when that was a thing? But so use opportunity in your vacation scheme to pick up opportunities wherever you can. So when that's speaking to people and building your network, there's going to be little opportunities that you can pick up on throughout your whole, VAC scheme or experience and so on. So just some do's and don'ts. I've compiled this list having spoken to trainees, partners, grad rec, a whole host of people. And here are a compilation of all their do's and don'ts. So when you're speaking to someone and you're trying to grow your network, have specific and precise questions. Don't be super general and say something like, I don't know, what happened in your sector today? Unless there's something really interesting that could happen, but you want to be something more specific. So for example, if you're speaking to, for example, a mergers partner, so I heard that there's a merger between company A and company B today, and the firm's handling that deal. How is that going? Or, ask a specific question like, how long do you think that will be? Or what are the different steps involved in that? Rather than sort of a question like, what are your thoughts on? Because it leaves it a bit too wide. And again, like I said, emphasizing there, questions that the person is able to answer. Even a good example is using myself. I get a lot of questions sent to me via LinkedIn for a bunch of different reasons. But like I said, what I do through my website is just share my tips about VAC schemes and training contracts. But I have people messaging me about, how do I apply for a visa to study in the UK? Well, I don't know the answer to that question. And it's not my job to find out for you. So make sure, whoever you're asking the question to, it's something that they're able to answer. Because you don't also want to be like, you're better than I know the answer, but you don't, kind of thing. You don't want to make them feel stupid. Listen intently. I've seen this a lot at networking events. You've asked someone a question. It's a very good question, and they've started talking about it, and they're very passionate because, they're in that area of law for a reason. And you start to drift off and you start to look at, what other people are talking about. So just make sure you're listening intently, because it's obviously very impolite when you have asked a question, but then you're not listening to the answer. And always, always, always thank the person for their time. Regardless of whether you've just asked one question or you've had a full-blown conversation. And, if you're in a VAC scheme and you're having lunch, and let's just say the partner comes up to you and say, hey, how are you doing? Blah, blah. They ask you what you're working on. You ask them what they're working on, and just say, oh, well, thank you very much for letting me know. That's really interesting. Just something as simple as that. And so do just make sure that you're being very, very polite. What not to do then? Oh, sorry, back one, Lavanya, sorry. Yeah, so what not to do? Don't waffle on us unnecessarily. Don't feel there's a need to constantly ask questions to fill gaps of silence. If you think, you're bleeding the partner dry, or the person you're speaking to absolutely dry, and they just don't want to be in those, they don't have anything else to add. You say, oh, well, that's really interesting. Well, thank you very much. And I really appreciate your input, and thank you for your time. And don't feel you need to constantly fill the gap. Don't take up all of your available time. So what we see a lot in VAC schemes is, in the formal lunch hours or the networking events that we have within a VAC scheme, there'll be sort of one partner and then maybe 4 or 5 VAC schemers or interns per partner that you can chat to. Don't be that one person that speaks for the full 15 minutes and nobody else gets a chance to ask any questions, because somebody else might ask the same question as you, but it's just more polite when everyone gets a chance to ask their questions. And again, don't be distracted when they're answering. Pay close attention, because they might ask you about it later. Oh, what did you think about when I said such and such? Oh, I don't know, I wasn't listening, I was daydreaming about this. So yeah, do make sure you're not distracted when they're answering. Okay, moving on then. Okay, so attitude. So there's a little bit of a balance here as well, because you want to have a lot of enthusiasm. You want to show the firm that you really want to be there, but you don't want to get to the point where you're actually just irritating. And in the nicest possible way, you want to show that you want to be there, but not to the extent that you're either just a carbon copy of everyone else there. You're just saying the same things and doing the same things, so it looks like you're just there for the sake of being there, or you're over enthusiastic and constantly asking loads of questions that may or may not be relevant, and you come across as a little bit irritating. So there is a bit of a balance there. And also, in terms of taking on work, you want to show that you're enthusiastic, and you want to bite to the opportunities that are presented to you. Can I sit on the call? Can I come with you to visit the client? Can I help you with any of that? But don't overpromise and underdeliver. So this is something that I personally learned in my VAC scheme. I was very keen, and I had sort of an hour gap at one point. So you send around what's known as a capacity email, and it's just an email that goes out to the team, or slightly wider, depending on who you choose to send the email to, and just saying, hi there, I've got a little bit of capacity. If anybody has any work, please fire it my way. And, for the first 10 minutes, nothing comes through. So you're like, okay, fine. And then 3 or 4 emails come through, and then you're like, and then you say, yes, I'll do that. Yes, I'll do that. Yes, I'll do that. And yes, I'll do that. And very, very quickly, you've amassed a lot of work that you're actually now not able to complete for everybody. So just be careful. There is a balance of being enthusiastic, but don't, overpromise and underdeliver, and just take on what you think you can. In terms of perseverance then, the work that you should be given in a VAC scheme should be, and don't panic, it should be work that you're able to complete. So it's work that they would give to you early trainees, first and second year trainees, and it's work that they know is suitable for VAC schemers. They're not going to give you anything that is so difficult, generally. But even if you are given something that seems a little bit out of your comfort zone, do persevere with it, even if it's something that you've never had any experience with. So for example, before I went into CMS and did commercial litigation in my VAC scheme, I had never done any form of litigation, or even raising court proceedings, how to raise court proceedings, where do you raise court proceedings, what do you say in the papers that you submit to the court. And I'd never seen this stuff before, and it is quite a lot to take in at the start. But do persevere with it. You'll be surprised at how much you can learn in the short time you're there on a VAC scheme. And you can always just set aside and sort of Google, what is blah, 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 if you're not sure. But do try and stick with it, even though it's really difficult. However, that does bring me to my last point, which is don't suffer in silence. If you've been given a piece of work that you've in a sector that you've never done before, and you have no idea how to even start, please don't just sit there and stare at a blank screen or trawl over Google or Westlaw or and LexisNexis and such. Just ask your trainee buddy or your supervisor just for a little bit more instructions, or you can ask them, oh, what is the best way to start this? Is this the best way to start this task? Or what would be the most efficient way to research about this? So don't sit there and suffer. You can ask for more instructions or more advice on how to do your task. And you can keep referring back to your trainee buddy or supervising partner. A lot more offices these days have open plans. So it is generally, you can just tap the person on well, actually now that you can't actually touch people because they're 2 meters away, but pre-COVID, when people used to sit, next to you on a desk, you could just turn around and look at them over the shoulder and say, hi, sorry, do you mind just, pointing me in the right direction for this? I guess now what you could do is you could have Teams running in the background or something where you can type a quick message, or we get work phones as well, so you can just fire a message to a colleague, or Skype, or an email or whatever. So don't suffer in silence, but do persevere, and balance the amount of enthusiasm. Okay, moving on to etiquette. Okay, the reason that etiquette is very important is I'm sure, all of you on this call are very intelligent people. You're very switched on, very bright, insofar that, you've got yourself into a vaccine, which we all know are, highly competitive. Now, you can I have spoken to GradRich and other HR recruiters and stuff like that about this, but everyone looks very, very similar on paper. Like, you're all university students, you all have X number of modules that you do, you all have a minimum knowledge of contract law, criminal law, blah, 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 blah. And so what separates you is how you carry yourself in a firm. And also what separates yourself. There is nothing worse than, the HR sitting at the bottom thinking, at the end of the VAT scheme thinking, okay, who shall we offer back schemes to? And then they run through listening, oh, I actually don't remember her. Her with the brown hair, blonde hair? You don't want to be, someone that is just forgettable, okay? You want to stand out and you want to be memorable. And one of the ways to do that is to really think about your etiquette throughout your back scheme, okay? So first of all, work hours. What are your work hours? Is it 9 to 5, 9 to 6, 8 to 6? Whatever. This should be spelled out to you either on your first day or, when you sign your vac scheme acceptance offer and things. And obviously, try not be late. If you're commuting or whatever, if you are going to be late. So, for example, I commuted into CMS when I was doing the vac scheme, and a couple of times the train was just delayed by about 5-10 minutes or something. So what you have to do in those situations is make sure you fire an email or a text or a Skype message to whoever's expecting you to let them know. It's just polite, it's professional, and it shows them that you care about your work hours, and you're not just turning up, at liberty. So, again, with lunch breaks and lunch hours, again, keep a note of how long you're taking. Don't take your liberties and sit chatting to, whoever for, a 2-3 hour lunch, and call it networking. So if you're doing that, your networking's gone on too long. But make sure, you're not taking liberties and you are back at your desk doing the amount of work that you need to be doing. And it also shows that you're committed to doing your work and you're not sort of lazing around and stuff. Having said that, there's a balance. Make sure you do take your breaks. We have like coffee machines all around the office, so you can just, whenever you want, just stand up, go get yourself a coffee. It's a nice, 2-minute walk there, 2-minute walk back, a couple minutes to make a coffee kind of thing. So it's like a 5-minute break. And make sure you are taking breaks, but don't take liberties. Don't be taking a coffee break every 10 minutes, is what I'm saying. Okay. In terms of politeness, literally, and I say this with so much, passion, be polite to absolutely everyone. Literally everyone, from the top right down to the bottom of the firm, because you never know who's going to have an influence on who makes a decision as whether or not you get a training contract out of the vac scheme. So I know for a fact that at CMS, the way it's done there is at the end of your vac scheme, everyone kind of sits around a table and they discuss, should we offer such and such a training contract, and everybody who you've come into contact with gets a say. Your trainee buddy, your supervisor, the partners, anybody else who's interviewed you, anyone that you've done work with, and so on and so on. So make sure you're polite to absolutely everyone, because they'll remember, oh, he was really nice, he blah, 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 and he really showed an interest in such and such and such. And that reflects really well on your person, when, HR are deciding whether or not to give you a training contract. Thirdly, communicating your workload. So like I said, don't take on lots of work if you can't complete it. For example, like I said, I took on a lot of work when I was in commercial litigation, and actually is still sitting there at sort of 7 o'clock, still trying to frantically do everything because you don't want to disappoint anyone, and you've accepted to do the work, so you have to deliver it now. And I was almost done, but try and don't fall in the same traps. Like, you don't want to be sitting in the office till midnight or whatever doing something. And they don't expect vac schemers to be in the office for longer than regular office hours. So don't feel like you have to stay in the office if you have no work to do, but don't feel like you have to stay in the office. And usually the work that you're given can wait till the next day, for example. So don't, make sure you're communicating your workload. Don't take on too much. Don't under-deliver. Finally, expect the unexpected. So lots of things can happen in a firm that you don't see happening. For example, when I was at CMS, there was a power outage in Edinburgh. So like our whole office block, which shares an office with like KPMG, Deloitte, and a couple other firms, the whole block, that like electricity just went out. And so we're all told to go home, but obviously I had loads of work to do, and so did other people. So expect the unexpected. How are you going to do that? Well, can you take the work home? Can you come in earlier the next day to do it? So you kind of have to plan and expect the unexpected. Other things, if a new case comes in and the partner says, quick, come help, and you need to kind of drop everything. You do have to be quite agile and flexible, and don't be like, right, I need to get this done, I need to get this done, and do nothing else until you get your one piece of work done. Because there might be something that comes in that's far more important than the piece of work you're doing. So it has to take priority. So for example, like IT issues as well, I just ended up getting a new laptop from IT because mine just didn't work. It lost a couple hours of work. But anyway, so expect the unexpected. Think about how you're going to be agile. Don't panic, stay as calm as you can. Just explain to your supervisor, oh, sorry, I wasn't able to get this done because, well, I had to get a new laptop because things stopped working. So just try and communicate effectively. Okay, on to the final one on continuous learning. This is really important for turning a VAC scheme into a training contract, because the firm wants to know that you're a good investment. They're paying you a good amount of money to be there. They're paying you a salary, if you're a trainee, and they want to know that you are a valuable asset to the firm. Okay. Without sounding like you're just an object. We're all people. But how you can do that is demonstrate that you're there to continuously learn. Okay. Firstly, feedback from your supervisor, from your buddy, from your peers, and speak to people around you. Or we also had like a VAC schemers chat in the Skype group as well. So we would just ask people, hi guys, what do you think of this kind of thing? So make sure you're continuously learning, getting feedback from those around you. It's very important to show growth, and that you're willing to learn, as opposed to thinking that the piece of work that you've drafted for a partner is the best thing that they have ever seen. So obviously be willing to take criticism, be willing to take feedback, take it well. Don't be salty about it, or worse, cry when someone hands you a piece of work and they say, oh, actually this is wrong, can you please amend this? So do take feedback to heart, but don't take it personally. They're not attacking you, saying that you're a terrible person. They're just saying maybe the work that you've done could do a little bit more work, and that's totally normal, especially if it's the first time you've drafted this particular document. You're not going to have any idea how to do it, and so do take on feedback from all of those around you. Make sure you're asking questions. Again, very important. Shows that you're interested, shows passion. Even if you end up in a department that you really don't know a lot about, that makes it a lot easier to ask questions because you know a lot less. But even if you're in a department where you already know, some stuff, ask some more detailed questions, ask some more specific questions, or questions that, you could have never found out had you not been in the firm. So how can you really utilize the opportunity that you have in a VAC scheme? Ask the questions that make you look, oh yeah, she's really intelligent. She came up with a really intelligent question on X, Y, and Z. And oh, that was a really good question. Blah, blah, made me think about such and such. So make sure you're using the opportunity to ask questions for your own continuous learning. And the last thing I've written there is other sectors, teams, and departments. So you might or might not have crossover with other departments. So make sure you're getting feedback from them as well, but also ask, if I had done this better in my sector, would that have affected something in your sector? Or if something goes wrong in this sector, how does that affect your sector? So some sort of thing like that shows that you're willing to learn, and that you're engaged and that you're interested, you're passionate, and just shows that you really want to be there and you want to improve. So when you come back in 2 years' time, or however later it is for a training contract, you are already better than the person you were 2 years ago, because you have shown a tendency to want to continuously learn. And they know that obviously over the course of a 2-year training contract, you're going to get even better. So that's the very basis of that. And just then, in terms of continuous learning, I haven't popped on the slide there, but wherever you go, make sure you take a pen and paper. Whenever you get called over for something, just take a pen and paper. You don't want to be given a bunch of instructions and then, forget what people have said to you. But also each day, what I did at the end of a working day, when I was on the train back home, I had about 13 minutes to sit and write out the things that I did. And it's just like almost like a diary, like a log. Today I drafted, blah, blah, blah. And you could just bullet point or whatever. And it shows, first of all, you can reflect on what you've learned and what you could have done better. Could you have reacted better? Could you have, done something more professionally? Could you have done something more quickly, more efficiently? Could you have done it with less help? But also, a lot of firms are now doing end of vaccine interviews, where again, they will assess you for a training contract at the end of your vaccine. Personally, this didn't happen at CMS, they sort of assessed throughout, but a lot of firms now do have an interview at the end of the vaccine where they will assess to see whether or not they want to keep you on for a training contract. And if you can remember the stuff you did, I when they're interviewing you and say, what was the best thing about the vaccine that you did? You tend to do a lot, so you might forget what you've done over 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, however long your vaccine is. If you can point to, I was working in the DL X and Y, and I found this interesting, and I learned this. It shows that you really want to be in the firm and you would like to stay with them, and hopefully that reflects well, and then in turn increases your chances of getting a training contract. So yeah, keep a note of everything that you do, what you've learned, how you could have done better. So yeah, finally, just any questions, and please feel free to either unmute your mic or something, or pop them in the chat. And if not, I actually have a huge list. Lavania's got a huge list of questions for me that you all very kindly sent in when you signed up. So, but yeah, if anybody's got any questions first, please feel free to pop them in the chat first, and we can kind of cover them before the other questions. But yeah, thank you very much for listening. So the last slide there did have my contact details, but we can put that back up at the end, and I can share my contact details with you at the end.
Yeah, does anyone have any questions? You can just pop it in the chat or unmute your mic. I'm sure we're all digesting everything Amelia has been saying.
A lot of information. There's a lot of do's and don'ts. I feel like some of it's quite nuanced and people don't notice little things. But these are just kind of things that I've picked up over the years, and that other people have told me. And I think that they're quite good tips to share with people.
Yeah, no, definitely. After etiquette, all I can think about is just carrying a cup of coffee around and being, do you want a cup of tea?
Yeah, I mean, always offer, if someone's next to you, it's a good thing to offer. Ask them how they like to take their tea or coffee.
Definitely. Right. If no one's gonna ask any questions, I'm going.
Guys, I think the chat is disabled.
The chat disabled.
Oh yes, so it is. Well, if anybody's got any questions, just unmute yourself and just say your name and then what your question is.
All right, then should I go next?
Yeah, go for it. Hi, Adam.
Okay. Hi, Amelia. Thank you for that wonderful session. So I'm an international student. So I'm hoping to start GDL in 2021, most probably in September. So I haven't been to UK as of now. So, there's a risk factor too, but the dream is a dream, right? So any advice you would give to an international student like me who's hoping to, who wants to secure a training contract? How hard is it?
Okay, so I would say that obviously firms don't discriminate whether or not you're an international student. So, you just apply on the basis that, you are a student in the UK or whatever. And so there's no, you're not disadvantaged by being an international student. If anything, you can be slightly advantaged. You can talk about different cultures, talk about inclusivity, diversity, you've got different backgrounds. Why does that make you stand out as a candidate? You have are you from another country? You have a different culture, and you can pull on that to make yourself stand out. But no, I don't particularly, I'm not an international student, so I don't know whether it's particularly harder or not. But I do know obviously firms don't discriminate whether or not you're an international student or not. Hopefully that answers your question. Jamie, did you have a question?
Thank you.
Yes, I do. Thank you. So I'm just wondering what you think the best way to go about networking would be now, given that a lot of back schemes and indeed training contracts have moved into the virtual space, and we're not going to have those face-to-face interactions and those water cooler conversations that you might have had during pre-COVID times. Yeah. So yeah, what would be your approach in this new virtual time that we're living in?
That's a really good question. Thank you. So this really emphasizes the importance, because you have less time. You don't, like I said, you don't have those water cooler conversations. You're going to have very specific times to ask your questions. And it just emphasizes how much more important it is that you research and think about what questions you're going to ask in advance. Don't waste the little amount of time that you can and that you do have. The other thing you can still watch out for is sort of body language, even, on screen. Don't sort of be sitting back and looking, look engaged, look at the camera, make sure your room's quite bright. You don't want to seem kind of dark, sorry. So make sure it is quite bright. People can hear you and see you clearly. So yeah, that's what I would say, still make sure you're doing very good research, and if anything, stronger research than before, because you have less time to ask questions, and still consider how you're coming across on camera. Hopefully, as university students, you have had a chance to do online lectures and things, so that shouldn't be completely new, but yeah, do just be mindful of how you're coming across on camera. So other questions, people's hands are up. So Dean?
Hi there, Amelia. Apologies. Thank you so much for your contribution this evening. I just had a quick question. So if I may ask, what do you think set yourself apart from the others on the others within your back scheme cohort to to successfully receive an offer from CMS?
Yeah, no, again, very good question. Like I said, you don't want to seem like a carbon copy, because then you're just very forgettable when people sit down and think, should we offer X a training contract? Well, who was that again? I forgot. Yeah, so it's very important that you do stand out. How do you do that? I guess a combination of everything I've said, being more polite than the person next to you, being willing to take on more opportunities than the person next to you, but also like networking. What makes you stand up? So I remember speaking to a partner, and he started talking about what he was going to do at the weekend, and he was going to take his partner, he's going to take his child skiing. So then I'm like, oh, my family ski a lot. So, and then you start talking about skiing, that kind of thing. So it's not even necessarily legal work and how you make yourself stand out in legal work. It's how you come across as a person. And again, networking is obviously so important to that, and trying to find common ground that they say, oh, I remember her, she's the skier. So something like that makes you stand out. Draw on what makes you unique and special. For example, what have you emphasized in your application for a back scheme? Do you have lots of work experience? Do you have a particular skill from a particular work experience? That sort of thing. So emphasize those qualities that you have, and try to be yourself. Don't try and be Jane blogs, Jane Doe. Yeah, Joe blogs, Jane Doe. And, try and be different and try and be yourself. But yeah, being upbeat, cheery, like something that people can remember.
Do you think that, would you say that it was that, I say that aspect of things, but would you say that it was just as important to be personable as, as it was to succeed within the task that you were set?
Absolutely. Your legal work, your legal work may or may not be that good, okay? Because you're being thrown into a sector that you've probably never done before. You're doing works that you've never done before. You're probably seeing documents for the first time in your life. Your legal work, yes, you have to pay attention and make sure you're taking time to produce quality work. But at the end of the day, they're judging you whether or not you fit into the culture of the firm. So that is so important, whether you fit into the culture of the firm. And that's based on your personality, your etiquette, your attitude, and whether that fits into the firm, because that's more memorable than the type, no one's going to remember, oh, she did a typo in that document, but they're going to remember, oh, she was really nice. She said blah, blah, blah. And so, yes, Dean, good question.
But sorry, just finally, and apologies, last question. And just in terms of what you touched on, it, in respect of the firm and the firm's culture, how did you go about ensuring that you knew CMS's culture and that you actually picked up on that throughout the scheme? Because I think it's one thing that you need to articulate within your applications, irrespective of the firm that you're applying to. But also, I think there's also an expectation that you finish the VAC scheme having a bit more of a developed awareness, perhaps. What was your approach?
It's actually very natural, and it's not, you don't necessarily have to go out and seek particular things about the culture. It's just, you're in an environment and you do pick up, that you do pick up the culture of the firm. For example, like, we have very big teams at CMS. It's obviously a huge firm. I think it's like the 6th largest in the world. It's a huge firm, so we obviously work in very big teams. If you're thrust into a team and realize that you're not a very good team player, you know straight away that the culture is not for you. So don't be so focused on finding out what the particular, buzzwords of the culture are. You will actually feel it as soon as you're in the firm. So it does come a lot more naturally than you think.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Don't worry about it. Okay, cool. Cher's iPhone. Cher's iPhone.
Hi, Cher. Could you unmute, please? Right, she might be busy.
Okay.
Do you do Larissa next?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah, sorry. I was not finding the unmute button. Otherwise, I can't even change my name. It's Kate's iPhone. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
Don't worry.
Yeah. My question is, like, before one of my colleagues asked, I'm also an international student and I have done my LLM in commercial law from DPP University London, and currently I am doing my LLM qualifying law degree, LLM QLD, from Big University of London. So the main thing, my main concern being an international student is, the less work and experience opportunities. So being an international law student, we have so much restrictions and we have so much complications. We can't get proper opportunities for the internship and the work experience. So we are not allowed to work fully, even I think in summer. And when we go for applying a full-time work, so they need experience. So there are so many troubles. So can you guide us how to, being an international student, how to cope with this situation, and what's the best way to apply for at least for utilize 3 months summer internship program? So we got 3 months summer holidays, vacations. So I want to utilize it, in a better way to join some law firm as an internee. So what would you recommend the best way?
So again, I'm not an international student, so I don't know the sort of ins and outs of applying. I don't know how to answer that question. I don't know on sort of eligibility or whether or not you can or can't work. I'm sorry, I don't know that. But in terms of you, and so I don't know what your rights to work in the UK and sorts of thing. If to find out, I would personally email the firms themselves. They will have dedicated HR and graduate recruit who can answer those questions on sort of eligibility. But in terms of getting work experience, you could sort of cold email around firms and things and ask whether they'll take you on informally. But again, that's obviously subject to rights to work and things, which again, I'm sorry, I don't know about. So sorry, I can't answer that, but hopefully someone...
Can you add something, yeah?
Pardon?
Can you add something?
Yeah.
In summer, we got 3 months vacation, so international students are allowed to work full time in their summer holidays. So we got 3 months holidays. So being an international student, I want to utilize my 3 months when I am allowed to work full time. So I want to do some law internship. So that's why I was asking.
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, I would apply to the different VAC schemes. That's not the purpose of this particular webinar. But maybe, I mean, I don't know if Legal Mile are hosting any other webinars and sort of applying to internships and things, but maybe that would be more appropriate for those kinds of webinars. And if that's okay, sorry.
Yeah, fine, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, Larissa.
Hi, you gave loads of really good tips about kind of asking for work during the VAC scheme. And I was just wondering, as because I did a philosophy degree and I kind of haven't done the LPC, or I don't really have much experience. So I was kind of wondering if you kind of knew any good ways to kind of get exposure to kind of different types of like kind of legal writings or like legal work that you might be asked to do on the VAC scheme. And also, I guess when you're actually on the scheme, because obviously I don't want to kind of embarrass myself and just do really bad work, I guess. So kind of balancing how to ask for work, also I guess making sure you do it well, if that makes sense. Like, I know you kind of covered that, but just kind of, I guess, how to kind of say if you're confused and stuff on the scheme. Thank you.
Yeah, no, good question. Yeah, so you will literally be thrusted into a department that you would probably never have any work, done any work in that. Like I said, like I did my VAC scheme before the LPC, you know, your English version of the LPC, like before I did the diploma. So again, I'd only done, you know, contract law, commercial law, like the very basic modules that you do at undergrad. You don't have experience of filling out forms, you know, to file to Companies House. You don't have experience of, you know, reading pleadings that go to court, those sorts of things. So don't worry about that. And they're not expecting like partner quality work. And plus the work they give you is not that difficult. It's going to be something that you're able to do with instructions, with a little bit of guidance and a bit of Westlaw. And they also have practical law and LexisNexis PSL. So definitely something that you can find out how to do. And don't worry about asking questions. They know that it's going to be something that you've never done before. You know, you're however old, 18, 19, like I think, I was 19 when I went on the VAC scheme. So, you know, quite young, and, you know, everyone else in the firm is much more experienced. So they know that you have no experience. So don't worry about asking questions. Just pop them an email or a message saying, hi, sorry, I was just wondering whether blah, 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 blah. Is this the best way to do it? Is this the most efficient way to do it? Or sorry, I'm just wondering if I could get a little bit more guidance on X. So don't be afraid, don't panic. They know that, you know, you're very, very junior. You're like the lowest bit of the firm the day you walk in, so don't worry about it. Calvin?
Hi. Thanks for the talk. I think it's been very helpful. I just had a quick question about more like specific etiquette, like specifically meeting etiquette. So how should I act if I'm allowed to sit in on a meeting? Because I'm actually currently in Hong Kong and I'm going to do my VAC scheme in Hong Kong, which means we're kind of doing it in person as well. So do I just sit in the corner and try to make myself as invisible as possible, or?
Okay, good question. Yeah, no, very good question. So I can answer that because actually it's very similar to the real in-person meetings I had as opposed to virtual meetings before COVID. So when I went to the meeting, what you do is the partner or whoever you're going with tends to introduce you as you know, an intern. So they're not going to be thinking that you're some partner walking into a firm. So but also you will probably find that you're not the only person that's not part of the meeting. For example, somebody else will have brought their trainee, or somebody else will have brought their secretary, or somebody else will have brought another intern. So don't worry about that. And in terms of being invisible, yes, don't say anything. Don't say anything unless you're asked. Your job is to sit there, absorb, take notes. Maybe your partner is giving you a task, you know, can you please note down blah, 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 blah. You know, it could be like taking board minutes or something. You might be given a specific task. It's not, you're actually just there to absorb the meeting, look at what other people are doing. And, you know, they're not furiously scrolling down or anything, but, you know, what are they doing? What are they saying? How are they responding? How are they acting with one another? How does this board meeting work? How does, what is the point of this meeting? What are they trying to do? Are they trying to agree a sale? Are they trying to merge a company? So yeah, you tend to, you know, if it's like a table and all the partners are around the table and all the different advisors or something, there tends to be another row of seats that are around the outside of the room. So just sit there and you can type away and stuff. So yeah, you do feel a little bit invisible, but again, your job is not to say anything in the meeting. You're not being, you know, you're not being paid to contribute to the meeting. But no, that's really exciting that you're doing it in Hong Kong. And hopefully it all goes well for you, Calvin.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Rory.
Hi, Amelia. Thank you very much for hosting this event tonight. I was just wondering, I think you were talking earlier about when you said you had an hour free. So you sent, was it a clearing email? You said you would send round to people to say, have you got any work? And I'm just wondering, after you send that email, let's say you've got an hour free, but you get all these different people saying, yes, can you do this? Yes, can you do that? And you're like, oh Christ, I can only say yes to 2 or 3 people. I'm just wondering, would you say it's a good idea to reply to say, I can't do this right now, but I could maybe do it tomorrow? Or how would you kind of broach the subject, really?
Yeah, so it's a capacity email. You just email around to say, okay, I have a little bit of capacity, an hour, whatever, or afternoon. So, you know, for example, there's nothing going on in your department. They'll say, send a capacity email to another department, and maybe they'll, you know, pass something to you. And if you do, like what happened to me, you get nothing for the 10 minutes and you're just sitting there all jolly, and then everything starts coming in. Do what you can. It's not necessarily a first come, first serve basis, because everything's kind of come at the same time. Pick something that you think you'll get the most out of. Not what's easiest, but what do you think you'll learn the most from? And for the ones that you have to reject, yes, exactly what you said there. I would just say, hi, unfortunately, my capacity has now been filled for the next 2 hours. However, if you still need help, then I can send you another email and you can let me know the details, because they'll tend to only send very basic details like, can you draft this? And then you have to take further instructions. So just say, you know, I can come back to you in a couple of hours if I still have capacity then. But also they know that you're interns and you sort of float around as well and you pick up different pieces of work. So don't worry, you're not going to feel like you're letting anyone down, because they know you're not tied to whoever's asking you to do the work. So don't worry, as long as you're polite in your email and say, you know, I'll let you know if I can come back to it later. But at the moment, my capacity has been filled.
That's great. Thank you.
No problem at all. Any other questions? Oh, sorry, I've noticed there's a couple in chat. What type of chance the university offers to get in contact with law firms? So usually there's law fairs. Last year, obviously, they were virtual. Cheek ran their virtual ones as well, and obviously all the university in Scotland had their virtual law fairs as well. But yeah, you do have quite a lot of opportunity, but again, the university don't spoon feed you, so it is your job to go out and find firms. A lot of firms will have campus ambassadors, like I myself was a CMS ambassador on campus, so if there's sort of a hub that you can and someone that you can speak to on campus, that's a good way to get in contact with firms. But no, the university generally will not, you know, spoon feed you. They'll advertise your opportunities, but they won't sort of spoon feed you. And Adam has said, working as paralegal help with securing a training contract with the same firm or any firm. Yeah, so I mean, any work experience, whether you're paralegal or not, whether you're working in a coffee shop, you're working in hospitality, you're working in sport coaching, or anything is good experience. So you're just drawing on that experience. It doesn't necessarily matter what firm it is, unless you have lots of inside connections that can kind of pull strings for you. But you're more focused on what experience that you have and how you can draw on that experience to differentiate yourself from other people, as opposed to what the specific is. So whether you're a coach, a paralegal, a waitress, whatever, and it's more about the skills that you get from that, and how you put that into an application. Larissa, if you have networked with someone, had coffee with them, would they feedback on you, or does it depend on the firm and how the VAT scheme works? And even if they don't say, you can ask, say you've done one piece of work for something, you can just say, just wondering if we can get just a feedback whenever you've got a second. I know you're very busy. Make sure you acknowledge that they're busy and that you're not their priority. But just say, just when you have a moment, I would love to hear your thoughts on the piece of work that I did. But obviously, if you're just having a coffee and meeting someone, you wouldn't ask for feedback on how you did in a meeting of coffee kind of thing. That's like having a conversation with your friend and saying, hey, was that a good conversation? That kind of thing. You don't ask them that. But if you've done a piece of work, then yeah. And if they don't give you feedback, absolutely, you can ask for feedback. Well, people ask about other firms you have applied during the scheme, and will it look bad if you haven't applied elsewhere? Okay, so yes and no. Firms generally, when they're having an interview, they will ask you what other firms you've applied to, and they don't do it in a derogatory or sort of manner to sort of put you down and try and, they don't try and force you to come to their firm. As say you have 2 offers, Alan Overy, CMS, for example. They're not going to sit and try and be like, come here, come to us kind of thing. They do just ask, I think, in terms of logistics, whether or not, the likelihood of you accepting and then they have another place to offer someone else. So it's not a personal question, it's more just a logistics question. And in terms of whether it looks bad you haven't applied elsewhere, I'm not sure. I mean, you could just say, oh, I'm so invested in firm X that I only applied here. You could. I've never been asked that personally, and whether or not I've applied other. I've had people ask, do you have offers elsewhere? But I've never had someone ask whether I've applied elsewhere. But yeah, I'm just if you can pop the last slide up, Lavanya, that's just got my contact details. I know obviously we're running close to 7 at the moment. I'm happy to take a couple more questions if anybody has, but also I'm well aware that it's 7 o'clock and you probably want to go away and eat some dinner or something. But Lavanya's popped my contact details up on the screen there. You please, what I should have said actually was one of the main things about networking is LinkedIn. And like I said, I did have a few of you message me before this, and I can see your names on things. So hello to those who have, or those I've met personally before. So yeah, it's on the last slide, sorry, Lavanya. But yeah, do get LinkedIn and connect with me if you haven't already. My name's just Amelia Mah. And if you have any other specific questions that you think that I would be, helpful in answering, please do fire me an email. So it's just Amelia, we haven't managed to get to you today, or you didn't want to ask it in front of everybody, please do feel free to send me a message on LinkedIn or an email, and I'll try and obviously get back to you as soon as I can. But hopefully, congrats on you guys that have got back schemes, and hopefully this has given you some sort of tips and how to successfully sort of turn that and increase your chances of turning it into a training contract. And I would love to hear from you guys, where you're doing the back schemes, and if you get your training contracts, please do let me know. I'd love to hear about it. But yeah, if there's nothing else, that's all from me, and hopefully I'll hear from some of you as well in the future and see some of you all in the future. So thank you very much for coming today.
Right, yeah, just picking